Staying up to date with developments in the defense domain can be a daunting task. As Africa's leading defense news portal, DefenceWeb aims to give you the latest updates on African defense matters, the South African National Defense Force, and the defense industry. My name is Justin Cronje, and welcome to the DefenceWeb podcast. In this week's edition, SIPRI reports African military spending has gone up by nearly 20%. Kellogg, Brown and Root has received $110 million in contracts to support the US military at Camp Lemonnier in Djibouti. Niger's National Guard is to receive an additional Dele unmanned aerial vehicle. The first female Nigerian C-130 Hercules pilot is training in the US. Belarus is set to produce unmanned aerial vehicles in Egypt. And a Helix surveillance aircraft has been spotted in Mozambique. Closer to home, Chinese trawlers have been fined for being in South African waters illegally. The United Nations has called South Africa's lockdown draconian. The Beit Bridge border fence emergency upgrade comes under parliamentary scrutiny, and the deployment of 1,165 SANDF personnel in the Democratic Republic of Congo has been extended. The SANDF contributes to assist the police with the coronavirus lockdown and has also welcomed Cuban health professionals in South Africa and received protective masks donated by the United States. Over the last 10 years, African military spending grew by 17%, rising to $41.2 billion in 2019, according to research from the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, SIPRI, which reports that last year, the world recorded the largest annual growth in military spending since 2010, rising 3.6% from 2018 to $1.917 trillion. At an estimated $41.2 billion, military expenditure in Africa accounted for 21% of the global total in 2019. The marginal growth in spending in 2019 was the first increase in African military expenditure for 5 years. Despite the annual decreases in 2015 to 2018, increases in other years meant that total African military spending grew by 17% over the decade from 2010 to 2019, SIPRI said. Military spending by countries in North Africa is estimated to have totaled $23.5 trillion in 2019, representing 57% of the total for Africa. Amid long-standing tensions between Algeria and Morocco, domestic insurgencies and continuing civil war in Libya, military spending in the sub-region was 4.6% higher than in 2018 and 7.7% higher than in 2010. Algeria's military expenditure of $10.3 billion in 2019 was the highest in North Africa and Africa as a whole, and accounted for 44% of the sub-regional total. Algeria's military spending has risen almost continuously since 2000, and particularly in the period 2004 to 2016, when expenditure grew for 13 consecutive years and reached an all-time high in 2016. At 6% of its GDP, Algeria's military burden was the highest in Africa in 2019. Military spending in sub-Saharan Africa fell by 2.2% in 2019 to reach $17.7 billion, which was 50% lower than in 2010. At $3.5 billion, South Africa's military spending was the highest in sub-Saharan Africa in 2019. Its spending fell by 1.5% in 2019, the fourth consecutive year of decrease. Nigeria was the second largest spender in the sub-region in 2019. It allocated $1.9 billion to its military, down by 8.2% compared with 2018. In recent years, spending on the military by sub-Saharan African states has been volatile, SIPRI said. Of the 19 countries that increased military spending in 2019, 8 decreased spending in 2018. Similarly, 13 of the 23 countries that lowered spending in 2019 had raised spending in 2018. This means that, overall, the trend in changes by 21 of the 42 countries in the sub-region for which relevant data is available reversed in 2019. SIPRI said that armed conflict is a major driver for the volatile nature of military spending in sub-Saharan Africa. SIPRI also said the 5 largest spenders in 2019, which accounted for 62% of worldwide expenditure, were the United States, China, India, Russia, and Saudi Arabia. Kellogg, Brown and Root, KBR, has received $110 million in contracts to support the US military at Camp Lemonnier in Djibouti. KPR announced on 22nd April that it had been awarded a $15 million bridge contract by the Naval Facilities Engineering Command Europe, Africa, Southwest Asia for repair, maintenance, and construction services at Camp Lemonnier. This is an extension of a contract KPR won in 2014, and the latest 6-month contract brings the total ceiling value to $65 million. Under the bridge contract, KPR said it will perform engineering, design, new construction, renovation, repairs, maintenance, replacement, alterations, demolition, and other construction tasks at Camp Lemonnier and its associated Chabalay airfield. Niger's National Guard is set to take delivery of a 4th unmanned aerial vehicle, UAV, from French company Dallaire, after having received 3 aircraft in November last year. Dallaire said that the Niger National Guard officially took delivery of 3 Dallaire DT-26 surveillance UAVs on the 27th of November 2019 during an official ceremony held near Niamey by the French Directorate of Security and Defense Cooperation, DCSD. The National Guard personnel had been training with the aircraft since at least June 2019. The delivery was part of a cooperation project with the French government to strengthen Niger's investigation and prosecution capacity relating to terrorism-related cases. The contract for the aircraft was signed off by the end of 2018 between Dallaire and DCSD. The DCSD is part of the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs and International Development, intended to develop international cooperation in the fields of defense, internal security, and civil protection. Captain Omar Lawali, the first female pilot in the Nigerian Air Force, recently accomplished the next step in her pilot's career on 22nd of April by completing her training to become a C-130 Hercules pilot in the C-130 Formal Training Unit's 6-month international pilot training program at Little Rock Air Force Base in Arkansas. The 314th Airlift Wing, in close partnership with the 189th Airlift Wing, trains more than 1,200 students a year, the U.S. Air Force said. Approximately 150 of those students come from countries around the globe to become combat-minded C-130 Hercules crew members. Belarus will manufacture unmanned aerial vehicles in Egypt under an agreement signed earlier this year. This is according to the chairman of the National Academy of Science of Belarus, Vladimir Gusakov. We've held negotiations with Egyptian partners and have come to terms on a good contract, roughly $1 million, on supplying and setting up an enterprise in Egypt to train specialists and make drones, Gusakov is reported as saying. The contract is believed to cover an initial batch of UAVs ahead of local production. A CADG Helix intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance aircraft has spent several days in Mozambique, where it has allegedly been used to monitor Islamist insurgents. A photograph of the aircraft with registration ZSTAX at Pemba Airport placed the aircraft there by 24th of April. It was parked next to what appears to be a Cessna Grand Caravan belonging to Ultimate Air. Flight tracking websites showed that the Helix came back to South Africa on 25th April, and the aircraft was seen at OR Tambo International Airport outside Johannesburg on 26th of April, still fitted with its surveillance gimbal. The aircraft is believed to have been in Mozambique to monitor Islamist insurgents in Cabo Delgado province. Ultimate Air is believed to have supplied several aircraft to private military contractors to combat Islamic State-affiliated insurgents, including the Helix from sister company CADG. The maritime security components of the Department of Environment Affairs, Forestry and Fisheries notched up a major protection success earlier this month when 6 Chinese fishing trawlers were found after illegally entering South Africa's waters. The trawlers were detected entering the South African Exclusive Economic Zone off the Northern Cape Coast on 3rd of April after being ordered out of the Namibian waters by Namibian authorities, the department said. Fisheries patrol vessel Sarah Bartman later intercepted the vessels off the Western Cape Coast and ordered them into the port of Cape Town, outer Anchorage. Following the interception of the vessels on the 7th of April, the Chinese embassy submitted a diplomatic note requesting permission for the vessels to shelter from adverse weather conditions in Cape Town. Once at anchor, all 6 trawlers were boarded by an integrated team, assembled in terms of the maritime security components of Operation Fakisa and thoroughly inspected. No fish were found on any of the vessels and all fishing gear was stored as required by the Marine Living Resources Act. All vessels were subsequently fined for entering South African waters without permission. With the unspecified fines paid, the trawlers were released and monitored for the duration of their transit through South African waters. The foreign registered vessels exited South African waters on 19th April. There was still no evidence of illegal activity while in South African waters on the east coast of the country, the Department of Environmental Affairs said. South Africa is among countries the UN Human Rights Commissioner maintains have instituted draconian and repressive measures to combat the spread of coronavirus. Human Rights High Commissioner Michelle Bachelet is quoted as saying in a statement, "Emergency powers should not be a weapon government can yield to quash dissent, control the population, and even perpetuate their time in power. Shooting, detaining, or abusing someone for breaking a curfew because they are searching for food is clearly an unacceptable and unlawful response. So is making it difficult or dangerous for a woman to get to a hospital to give birth. In some cases, people are dying because of inappropriate application of measures supposedly put in place to save them. Respect for people's rights covers inherent freedoms across the spectrum, including economic, social, and cultural rights, as well as civil and political rights," the statement reads. Her office highlighted abuse allegations that apparently transgress key basic freedom from South Africa to the Philippines and from Hungary to Jordan. Bachelet's Director of Field Operations, Georgette Gagnon, said, "Many countries adopted a heavy-handed and highly militarized security response to the virus, including South Africa. We received reports of disappropriate use of force by security officers, particularly in poor and informal settlements. Rubber bullets, tear gas, water guns, and whips were used to enforce social distancing in shopping lines and outside homes," she said. 3 weeks into the South African lockdown, data indicated over 17,000 people had been arrested for breaking COVID-19 regulations. The Independent Police Investigative Directorate is investigating complaints against officers for murder, rape, assault, discharge of firearms, and corruption, which Gagnon said highlighted a toxic lockdown culture. 15 complaints regarding alleged use of excessive force and physical abuse by soldiers were lodged with the Office of the Military Ombudsman in the first 4 weeks of the national lockdown. Upgrading 40 kilometers of fence either side of the Beitbridge port of entry has ruffled feathers, with parliamentary committees also now involved. The new fencing, erected under the auspices of Minister Patricia de Lille's Department of Public Works and Infrastructure, at a cost of 39 million rand, was breached while work on it was still underway. A call by the opposition Democratic Alliance appears to have been part of the minister's call for an audit of the project by Auditor General Kimi Makwetu. At the same time, Democratic Alliance Shadow Party Deputy Public Works and Infrastructure Minister Samantha Graham-May wants de Lille to brief Parliament on what she calls the Beitbridge border fence scandal. Further repercussions are expected as Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Home Affairs and the Select Committee on Security and Justice seek to engage the Portfolio Committee on Public Works and Infrastructure and de Lille's department to ensure accountability on the emergency fence. And in South African National Defence Force news, President Cyril Ramaphosa has informed Parliament that the 1,165 South African National Defence Force members in the Democratic Republic of Congo will be deployed for another year as part of the UN stabilization mission in the Democratic Republic of Congo, known as MONUSCO. This was in a letter sent on 22nd March and discussed by the Joint Standing Committee on Defence. Ramaphosa's letter said South Africa will keep 1,165 SANDF personnel in the Democratic Republic of Congo from 1st of April this year to 31st of March 2021. They will form part of the multi-country peacekeeping mission MONUSCO and its Force Intervention Brigade. The brigade is staffed by 3 southern African countries, Malawi, South Africa, and Tanzania, and is currently the only UN peacekeeping component with an offensive mandate in executing its civilian protection tasking. SA National Defence Force members under command of Joint Tactical Headquarters Western Cape have confiscated nearly 100 kgs of drugs at a roadblock near the Garden Route. Whilst at a roadblock at Tsitsikamma Toll Plaza, Alpha Company Platoon 1, under the command of Sergeant N.R. Thomas and Section Commander Corporal M.J. Molatsane, found bags of cannabis being transported to suppliers. Approximately 87 kgs of the drugs was hidden in potato bags. According to Alpha Company Commander Captain K.A. Mathobi, the perpetrators were arrested by Plettenberg Bay SAPS. Criminals who think they will get away with their activity by making use of essential deliveries are warned that they are not. Rather stay home and only go out for essentials, he said. The South African National Defence Force has welcomed a team of more than 200 Cuban doctors who arrived at Waterkloof Air Force Base on 27th of April. The healthcare professionals are deployed to assist South Africans stem the tide of the new coronavirus cases. The members of the medical brigade includes family physicians, epidemiologists, biologists, healthcare technology experts, engineering experts, biotechnology experts, and other specialists, the SANDF said. Adding that South Africa is one of the many countries to benefit from Cuba's healthcare assistance. In previous cases of crisis, Cuban doctors were the first to arrive in Africa to help fight Ebola. The US Embassy in South Africa, through its Office of Defense Cooperation, has provided 12,400 protective masks to the South African Military Health Service to assist the country's efforts to combat COVID-19. The US Embassy personnel delivered the masks to the Pretoria Military District, Pretoria West, on 23rd of April. The FFP2 filtering face piece particles respirator masks are approved by the European Union and are the equivalent of the N95 respirator masks used in the United States. The donation of potentially life-saving masks is indicative of the respect and value we hold for our partnership with South Africa and the SANDF's Military Health Service. Their COVID-19 response has been commendable, and we support them on the crucial mission of supporting the people of South Africa, said US Ambassador Lana Marks. Introducing its latest 2020-21 annual performance plan, the Department of Military Veterans notes it is working to improve and sustain the livelihoods of military veterans community. This it aims to achieve by facilitating delivery of benefits and coordinating all activities that recognize and entrench the restoration of dignity and appreciation of the contribution of military veterans to South Africa's freedom and nation building. The annual performance plan has it that South Africa's military veteran community comes from 10 different forces. They are or were Umkhonto we Sizwe, the SA Defence Force, Transkei Defence Force, Venda Defence Force, Azanian People's Liberation Army, SA National Defence Force, Baputhatswana Defence Force, Ciskei Defence Force, Azanian National Liberation Army, and the Union Defence Force. All told, the national database of the South African military veterans numbers comes close to 81,000, with the majority, 41,446, from the former SADF. The current National Defence Force contributes 14,804, with the Azanian People's Liberation Army contributing 5,284, and the Umkhonto we Sizwe 13,473. The former Homeland Defence Forces, Transkei 1,980 and Baputhatswana 1,794, each add 1,000 plus to the national military veteran population. And in company news, 4 Denel employees who have been working on a project based in Sevilla, Spain, have safely returned to South Africa. The 4 employees landed on Saturday, 25th of April, on board on SA Airways aircraft, as part of a group of South Africans repatriated from Europe on Friday. The employees were contacted by Denel Aeronautics at the Airbus assembly plant in Seville, Spain, when the outbreak of the pandemic occurred. Denel Aeronautics had a contract with Airbus to deliver critical parts of the A400M airlifter. The parts are manufactured at the Denel Aeronautics campus in Kempton Park and then shipped to Seville for final assembly. Spain is one of the countries in Europe that has been hit hardest by the virus, and the 4 could not immediately return because of the stringent travel restrictions imposed by both countries. Their stay had to be extended due to the lockdown in Spain and the cancellation of all flights to South Africa. The contract had been due to expire in mid-April 2020. Please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, our daily and weekly newsletter, and our other social media platforms if you enjoyed the podcast. Leave your comments below. Thank you for watching. Stay safe during the lockdown, and we'll see you next week.